Before he spoke, they measured him. Before he answered, they judged him. Before he defended himself, they decided how much respect he deserved, and every explanation lowered his value. He thought clarity would earn respect. He believed logic would win arguments. He trusted that if people understood him, they would treat him fairly. He was wrong. The more he explained, the smaller he became. Because explanations are rarely heard as strength. They are heard as defense, and defense implies guilt. The world does not reward the man who clarifies. It studies the man who remains calm under suspicion. There is a difference. One seeks approval. The other assumes authority. He didn't notice it at first. The slight shift in tone, the subtle interruptions, the way people leaned back when he started justifying himself. They were not listening. They were calculating. Every extra sentence signaled doubt. Every long response signaled insecurity. And insecurity invites control. People test what they can dominate. They provoke. They question. They misinterpret on purpose, not for truth. For leverage. He thought they were confused. They were not confused. They were measuring his threshold. How far can we push him? How much will he tolerate? How badly does he need to be understood? Because the one who needs understanding is already negotiating from below. Then something changed. Not outside. Inside. He grew tired, not angry. Not emotional, just aware. Aware that every explanation was a request. A request for validation. A request for fairness. A request for permission to be seen correctly. And permission is never given to equals. It is granted to subordinates. That realization was quiet, but it cut deep. He replayed moments in his mind. Arguments that should have ended in seconds. Conversations that stretched because he tried to fix perception. He saw the pattern. When accused unfairly, he defended. When doubted, he overclarified. When misunderstood, he expanded. And each time, his frame weakened. Because power does not rush to repair its image. It lets perception sit. Silence unsettles people. Silence forces them to confront their own assumptions. But explanations? They relieve tension. They give others comfort. And comfort removes pressure. He had been removing pressure for everyone else. He decided to stop. Not dramatically, just deliberately. The next time someone questioned him, he answered briefly. No extra detail. The next time someone implied something false, he looked at them, paused, and said nothing more than necessary. The room shifted, subtle, but real. People leaned forward. They expected more. They waited for the usual expansion. The familiar defense. It never came. And in that space, their certainty weakened. Because when you don't rush to correct someone, you imply you don't fear their opinion. And the absence of fear creates gravity. Most people speak to relieve their own discomfort. They over-explain because tension feels dangerous. But tension is a tool. Held properly, it creates presence. He realized something else. When you explain too much, you reveal your internal debate. You expose hesitation. You expose doubt. And doubt is contagious. If you sound unsure, others become unsure of you. But when you speak less, your words weigh more. Scarcity increases value. This applies to attention, to emotion, to speech. He was no longer trying to win arguments. He was managing perception, and perception shapes hierarchy. In every group, there is an invisible ladder. Some climb by force, some climb by noise. The strongest climb by restraint. He stopped chasing the final word. He stopped correcting minor inaccuracies. He stopped proving he was right. And something unexpected happened. People started second-guessing themselves. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe he sees something I don't. Silence creates mystery. Mystery suggests depth, and depth implies power. He did not become colder. He became selective. Selective with energy. Selective with reactions. Selective with who deserved explanation. Because not everyone is entitled to access your reasoning. Access is privilege. When you explain yourself to everyone, you flatten your status. You make your mind common property. He began answering questions with questions. Not defensively, strategically. What makes you think that? Simple, direct. Now the pressure moved. Now they had to justify. The dynamic reversed. The one who explains holds the weaker position. the one who evaluates, holds control. He stopped reacting instantly. Delays became deliberate. A pause before responding. A measured look. A calm shift in posture. Microsignals. Signals that said, I am not threatened. People sense threat like animals. They detect tension in breath, in voice, in speed. When he slowed down, others slowed down. When he remained steady, others became unsure. Most conflicts escalate because someone feels exposed. Exposed people talk too much. They reveal strategy. He stopped revealing strategy. He realized something dangerous. The need to explain comes from the fear of being disliked. And the fear of being disliked is the gateway to submission. If you require approval, you can be controlled. If you require agreement, you can be manipulated. If you require understanding, you can be delayed. He removed that requirement, not because he stopped caring, but because he stopped negotiating his worth. Worth does not beg. It stands quietly. He noticed how uncomfortable people became. They pushed harder. Why didn't you respond? Don't you care? Are you ignoring me? The old version of him would rush to reassure. The new version simply replied, I heard you. Nothing more, no justification, no emotional padding. And the conversation ended faster, because without extra fuel, fires die quickly. This is what most people never understand. Arguments survive on explanation. Drama feeds on clarification. Manipulators thrive on reaction. Remove reaction, and their leverage disappears. He stopped explaining, and suddenly others began explaining themselves to him. He didn't ask for it. They volunteered it. Why? Because humans are uncomfortable when hierarchy is unclear. When you don't chase validation, you appear self-contained. Self-contained people feel higher in rank, even if they say nothing. He discovered that power is often subtraction, not addition. Subtract unnecessary words. Subtract defensive tone. Subtract urgency. What remains is presence. Presence does not compete. It does not scramble to fix impressions. It allows others to reveal their own insecurities. He watched as conversations changed. People were more careful. They chose words more cautiously. They filled silence faster than he did, because silence feels like judgment to the uncertain, and most people are uncertain. He didn't need to dominate the room. He simply stopped surrendering it. That was the shift. Not louder, quieter, not aggressive. Composed. He understood something else. The one who explains the most is usually the one afraid of loss. Loss of reputation, loss of connection, loss of approval. But when you are not afraid to lose, you become difficult to pressure. Fear is visible, and visible fear invites attack. He removed visible fear by removing unnecessary explanation. This does not mean silence in every situation. It means discipline. Discipline to speak only when it adds weight. Discipline to let others sit in uncertainty. Discipline to tolerate being misunderstood temporarily, because temporary misunderstanding is cheaper than permanent submission. He noticed how often people explain themselves apologies that weren't required, defenses against imaginary accusations, long stories to justify simple decisions. It is a habit, a reflex that conditioned from childhood. Explain yourself, so we learn to, constantly, but adults who still over-explain signal lingering dependence. Dependence on being perceived as good. Good is safe. Safe is controlled. He stopped trying to be seen as good. He focused on being effective. And effectiveness does not need applause. It needs results. The strongest shift was internal. He no longer felt the rush to correct every narrative. He let some stories die naturally. He let some misunderstandings fade. He trusted time more than immediate defense. And time revealed something powerful. Most accusations collapse. When not fed, most critics lose energy. When not entertained, most manipulators retreat. When not rewarded. The shift was not loud, but it was undeniable. Respect increased. Interruptions decreased. Conversations shortened. People watched him more closely. Because unpredictability commands attention. When you stop following the expected script, others reevaluate you. Reevaluation creates caution. Caution creates distance. Distance creates authority. He didn't become emotionless. He became strategic. There is a difference Emotion reacts, strategy waits. And waiting is a display of control. The room feels it, even if no one admits it. He learned to let silence finish his sentences. He learned that a calm stare is stronger than a paragraph. He learned that the need to explain is often a confession of self-doubt. And self-doubt is sensed instantly. So he removed the confession, not by pretending, but by deciding that his value was not up for debate, deciding that misunderstanding was survivable, deciding that approval was optional. And when that decision settled, everything shifted, not because he became louder, but because he stopped negotiating. The world did not suddenly become fair. People did not suddenly become kind. But the dynamic changed. He was no longer easy to pull, no longer easy to corner, no longer easy to provoke, because provocation requires reaction, and reaction requires ego. He detached from the need to win perception battles. He let others think what they wanted, and ironically, they thought more carefully. When you don't defend yourself, you suggest you don't need to, and that suggestion is powerful. Most people spend their lives explaining who they are. He chose to demonstrate instead. Demonstration is silent, consistent, unapologetic. It does not chase recognition. It attracts it. And in the end, the shift was simple. He stopped explaining, and the world stopped testing him as often, because people test what seems uncertain. He removed uncertainty, not with noise, with stillness. The difference between the weak and the powerful is not volume. It is dependence. One depends on being understood. The other depends on nothing. So ask yourself, how many of your words are attempts to clarify? And how many are quiet pleas for approval? Because the moment you stop explaining your worth, you will see who was only listening to measure your weakness, and you will realize something uncomfortable. They were never confused. You were just too available.